In this video, we're going to discuss connective tissue, which is the most widely abundant type of tissue. It is widely distributed, it's found all over, and it generally works to connect things together, like the name suggests. It also has roles in protecting and supporting and binding, and it is kind of tricky to figure out which is a connective tissue. I like to think of it as the miscellaneous category of our tissue types, but it has a few characteristics. So they do have varied blood supplies, where our epithelial tissues were all avascular. Some here are avascular, like cartilage, whereas others are more well vascularized. But in general, connective tissues are cells with an extracellular matrix, or ECM. And the ECM is produced by those cells of the connective tissue. And they're going to make this matrix that goes on the outside of the cell membrane. And that ECM is made of two major things. It's made of ground substance and then fibers. The ground substance is composed of polysaccharides and proteoglycans, which are sugars, as well as sugars on different proteins. And the sugars are charged, and so they're going to trap in water. So the more sugar you have, the more water you're able to fit, the more liquidy the tissue is. The less polysaccharides means less water, means a more solid shape. So that's a difference that you need to pay attention to and think about what those sugars are doing. So again, these are charged. The charge is going to attract in that polar water. So cells in the connective tissue produce ECM, which is again ground substance, and then fibers. And the fibers are going to be of three types. They're either going to be collagen, which give it strength, elastin, which makes it rebound or flexible, or reticular fibers, which are more like soft and cushiony. They're kind of lacy fibers. And different types of connective tissue are going to have a different ratio of cells to ECM, as well as a different ratio of ground substance to fibers. And so more fibers and less ground substance, again, means more rigidity, and then less of that ground substance is going to be a more liquid-like. So more ground substance is going to be more liquid-like. Okay. We can break connective tissue down into three groups, and each group has subgroups. So you talk about proper connective tissue, which is either dense or loose. You can talk about supportive connective tissue, which is either bone or cartilage, or fluid connective tissue, which is either blood or lymph. So let's start with proper. Our loose types, we have three loose types of proper connective tissue. The first is areolar tissue, which is a cushiony protective tissue. It's got a loose network of fibers, a lot of elastic and collagen fibers, so elastic giving it that flexibility, collagen giving it some strength. And this is a reservoir for water and salts. So it's got lots of ground substance, lots of water, lots of proteoglycans, lots of sugar. So it's going to be a loose, more liquidy type of tissue. A classic example here is the lamina propria, which is the layer that we find under our mucous membranes. And the areolar tissue is actually what swells up when a person has edema. So edema is a swelling, and it's a swelling of our areolar tissue. It's more and more water filling that areolar tissue, causing things to expand. The second type of proper loose tissue is our adipose tissue. Adipose tissue, what you can see here is that it's not really full of fibers. So adipose tissue is known instead for its oil droplet, which takes up the majority of the cell and actually can push aside the nucleus. We find adipose tissue under our body, under that skin layer, and it insulates, it protects our organs, and the fat depots are actually great for energy storage. The last type of loose proper connective tissue is our reticular tissue. And this has those reticular fibers, those lacy fibers, and it functions to be the internal framework to support organs like our lymphoid organs or our spleen, for example. Moving to dense proper tissue, we have dense regular tissue as tendons and ligaments. And this is regular because the collagen fibers here are in parallel. So our ECM is made of parallel collagen fibers to give it a lot of strength, made from fibroblast cells. And we have two types of dense regular connective tissue. We've got tendons, which attach our skeletal muscle to the bone, and ligaments, which connect the bones together at joints. Proper dense irregular tissue, on the other hand, has collagen fibers that are not fully parallel to each other, so they kind of go in all directions, but they still are pretty close together. They're still densely packed, And so this still gives a lot of strength to the tissue. And we're going to see this in tissues like our arterial walls to support out those stressed high impact tissue. Let's now talk about supportive tissue, our bone and cartilage. So bones protect and support the body. The cell of the bone is called an osteocyte. There are a few other cells that we'll talk about in our bone chapter, but the one you need to know for now is the osteocyte. And the extracellular matrix for our bones really plays into that strength function. So it's going to have calcium, it's going to have collagen, it's going to have a hard matrix. There are two different types of bone tissue that we'll talk about again when we talk about bones. Spongy bone, which is more loose, and then compact bone, which is more tightly arranged. So shown up here are the compact bone, and it actually looks like tree trunks. So it's going to have tight layers of that cells with matrix. Moving into cartilage, we have three major types of cartilage. The first is our hyaline cartilage. This covers joint surfaces, and it's got a glassy blue-white look. The chondrocytes are the cells, and they make collagen. So again, you're going to think strength, collagen. They are in places like attaching our ribs to our breastbone, in our trachea, in our nose. They also form the basis of our fetal skeleton. So our fetal skeleton starts as all hyaline cartilage that's then turned to bone. And again, the collagen is really going to give it its strength. But the hyaline cartilage is known specifically for a glassy, smooth surface that allows for movement. Fibrocartilage is more compressible. So it's got rows of collagen from chondrocytes, and the arrangement of the collagen fibers, as well as the presence of that water, more water in that ground substance, gives it a compressible squishiness. And it forms the disc between our vertebrae, for example, as well as the pubic symphysis, that area that holds our pubic bones together. The last type of cartilage is elastic cartilage, and this is very flexible because of those elastic fibers that are secreted that form that extracellular matrix. And the major place for elastic cartilage is your external ear. So this is made, you get your cartilage pierced, you're actually getting your elastic cartilage pierced specifically. Okay, let's end connective tissue by talking about blood. So we're not really going to talk about lymph. I'm going to save that for A&P2 when you talk about your lymphatic system. But blood is a weird type of connective tissue. Now, you might just think, well, it's a bunch of cells. Yes, but where's the extracellular matrix? Where are the fibers? The fibers are actually soluble until a clot is formed, and that's when you'll see those fibers form. So blood are cells surrounded by a fluid matrix, which is plasma, and lymph is similar. It is our interstitial fluid and transports our immune cells. And again, I'll save lymph for A&P2. So as you end this video, you want to try and think about some of the similarities and differences between the major types of connective tissue. Those proper tissues, the supportive tissues, the fluid ones. How are they different? How are they similar? How are they composed structurally? How does the structure relate to function? In the next video, we'll end our discussion of tissues with muscles and the nervous system.